Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show where we take you through the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. It's a new year and we're already looking forward to the start of the 2025 F1 season in March. For now though, here's the stories keeping us entertained in the off-season. This week we react to the news that former F1 driver and current Sky F1 commentator Martin Brundle has been honoured in the King's New Year's honours, and we also celebrate the great Michael Schumacher's birthday and ask if he's Formula 1's greatest of all time, aka the GOAT. All that and a whole lot more is coming up in today's show. Let's dive in. Good news everyone, Martin Brundle is being honoured with an OBE, the Order of the British Empire, for services to motor racing and sports broadcasting. Brundle has been a fixture on British TV ever since he had retired from Formula 1 after the 1996 season. He joined ITV in 1997 and has since commentated for whoever has been the main broadcaster of Formula 1 since then, including of course BBC Sport and now Sky Sports. And I think this is absolutely deserved as well. He is someone who is, quite frankly, I don't like using the word very often, but I think the closest equivalent to a broadcasting legend that we have in the UK now, since of course the great Murray Walker passed away a few years ago. I think it's fantastic that Brundle has gotten this honour, and it's fully deserved in my opinion. Like I said, he is someone who is incredibly informative. He is someone who is a pleasure to listen to. He has always got an opinion on things. He rarely sits on the fence, and yeah, he's just a legend of broadcasting really when it comes to the British broadcasting here in the UK. I think it's fantastic, and on top of that as well, he was a really good racing driver as well. He is quite often regarded as being one of, if not the best Formula 1 drivers to never win a race. He came close on a few occasions but never quite managed it. But despite that, he got a lot of podiums, had a lot of success in the sport in the 1980s and 1990s, and very much a nearly man of Formula 1, someone who could have gone to achieve a lot more had he made some better career moves potentially through his career. But of course as well, he had a lot of success outside of that too. He had a lot of success in sports cars and endurance racing, winning Le Mans, of course being the sports car world champion back in the 1980s as well. So for me, he's absolutely someone who deserved this award, and I think it's very good. I think it's a good precedent because, for me, Formula 1 is a sport that is a bit overlooked, I think, in the UK. I think it's a bit disregarded by some sections of society, which I think is a bit disrespectful to say the least. I mean, I personally thought that Lewis Hamilton was never going to get knighted. It just seemed like it was something that was never going to happen, especially during his career still ongoing. But it did happen. So maybe the tide is starting to turn because there's not that many former racing drivers that have been honoured. I mean, we had Sir Stirling Moss, we had Sir Jackie Stewart as well, of course. And now we've got Martin Brundle OBE, as we'll be able to call him in the new year. Of course, there's always going to be critics of it. I'm sure there's going to be some sections where people are thinking, how on earth has he managed to get this? They're just handing out these awards for fun nowadays. I mean, there's been controversy in the footballing world, of course, as well, which I've covered on thefootballchronicle.com, where Gareth Southgate will be Sir Gareth Southgate in the new year. But for me, I think this one should be a lot less controversial. Like I said, Martin's been someone who has, covered Formula 1 now as a broadcaster for coming up to 30 years. Like I said, he absolutely deserves this. If anybody deserves this, it's him when it comes to broadcasting on the British side of things. I don't know the media in other countries that well. I'm sure there's some other people who've had some sort of honours, of course, in other countries when it comes to this. But yeah, for me, Brundle, for not just his broadcasting, mainly his broadcasting, I think that's probably what's mostly earned him that, because he is someone who is fantastic to listen to, but also as a really good racing driver as well back in the day. So yeah, Martin Brundle OBE. What are your thoughts in the comments below? Happy birthday to Michael Schumacher, the 7-time Formula 1 world champion. Turns 56 years of age on the 3rd of January. And for those kids that don't know how good this guy is, I'm sure some people nowadays question whether Michael Schumacher is the GOAT or one of the GOATs, the greatest of all time of Formula 1. And for me, there is absolutely no doubt that this guy is absolutely up there. Despite some very controversial moments in his career, you cannot deny that on his day, which was pretty much every Sunday afternoon, pretty much, this guy was absolutely unstoppable in a Formula One car. So I'm just going to give my opinions on this and, you know, him as a person and his controversial moments in Formula One. I did a full in-depth podcast years ago about Michael Schumacher and why, for me, he's one of the greatest of all time, without a doubt. You know, when he retired, I mean, the thing is, Schumacher retired for the first time in 2006. And this was just before Sir Lewis Hamilton made his debut in Formula One, before Sebastian Vettel made his debut in Formula One, nearly a decade before Max Verstappen made his debut in Formula One. You know, when Schumacher retired, arguably at the peak of his powers still as well in 06, I mean, he was challenging for the World Championship, an 8th World Championship in 2006 with Fernando Alonso. So he was by no means slowing down, and he could have kept going, in my opinion. You know, and, you know, this is a guy that rewrote every single record in the book. 7 World Championships, you know, I mean, the closest anybody got to that at that time was indeed Juan Manuel Fangio, got 5 World Championships. Lewis Hamilton has since equaled that statistic as well, and Hamilton has beaten a lot of Schumacher's records as well. But at the time when Schumacher retired, when, you know, you look at the similarities between their two careers in terms of their achievements, you know, they're quite neck and neck, really. There's not a lot between them. The only difference is that Hamilton now has competed in much more Grand Prix, because even though his career has not been as long, there are much more races now. You know, most of the seasons when Schumacher was racing, there was, 17, 18 races. Nowadays, there's, you know, 24, 23 races every single season. But 91 victories from just over 300 starts. And I think, again, by the time that he retired first time around, he had something around just over 200 race starts. So, you know, you're getting towards a win every other race, which is just ridiculous when you take his whole career in kind of retrospective. 155 podiums as well. I mean, that's half the races he competed in total. Again, you take his later career when he made his comeback in 2010 out of there, the stat gets even more impressive. 68 pole positions as well, which was a record. He broke Ayrton Senna's record of 65 pole positions very late on in his career, and 77 fastest laps. Again, a record, and I think still a record to this day, unless I'm very much mistaken. Now, before I get into some of Schumacher's best moments in Formula One, I'm going to go through some of his darkest, because people will always bring these up when it comes to Michael Schumacher, and they will quite often use them as reasons for him not being the greatest of all time, which I understand to an extent. But someone said this very well on my F1 YouTube channel, the F1 Chronicles YouTube channel, a while ago, and we're talking about Max Verstappen and his controversies. This was a guy that apparently has seen every single Formula One season. He must be rather old for sure if this person's telling the truth. But, you know, I think his point is valid regardless of whether, you know, his claim of being, you know, around since 1950, being able to see all the great champions, is true or not. And that point is that all the great champions have controversies. They put themselves on that pedestal, and they are very much there to be shot at from everybody, whether it's the media, whether it's other drivers. And I'm not saying Schumacher's a victim in this. I mean, partly I think he is, but he did make a rod for his own back at times. I mean, you look at some of the controversies in his career, and it's quite prevalent what happened, really. I mean, 1994 in Australia, going for his first world title with Damon Hill, that is one that very much divides opinion to this day. I'm very much of the opinion that Schumacher knew what he was doing with that, and perhaps he should have been punished for it. You know, I don't think there's a counter argument to that. I think it's pretty clear what happened. But what is absolutely not in doubt is 1997, going for the championship there with Jacques Villeneuve and deliberately trying to hit him and take him off, just like he did 3 years prior, in my opinion, with Damon Hill. And he was thrown out of the championship as a result. He was disqualified from the 97 Drivers' Championship, and he was almost fired from Ferrari as a result. The Italian media was calling for his head at the time. And then, of course, there's ones like 2006 in Monaco, where he deliberately blocked the track to try and stop qualifying and stop people doing a faster time. He got punished for that. But in every single one of these moments where there is a counter of so many incredible moments. I mean, Schumacher produced some of the most unbelievable drives. And when Martin Brundle, who was his teammate at Benetton in 1992, when he speaks about Schumacher, he says that he was the most complete Formula One driver he's ever seen. And I absolutely agree with that. I think the guy was an absolute relentless winning machine. And honestly, I think Max Verstappen might well rival him as he goes through his career, as he gets older. Obviously, Verstappen only being 27 years of age, you know. So it's hard to say where Verstappen will go. But, you know, Schumacher, where he went to, the level he went to, he was just unbelievable. Once he got in the lead of a race, he never let it go. He had an absolute vice-like grip, a stranglehold on the sport for so long. 1994, in his first season for Benetton, the guy was winning every single race pretty much, or second in every single race. He only went to the last round of the season because of the disqualifications and the penalties and things like that. If it wasn't for that, Hill wouldn't have had a hope in hell of catching him. 1996, he then moves to Ferrari, tries to revive the Scuderia's fortunes, and he turns that team around. 96, you know, the team was not quite there really when it came to the performance of the car, but he still produced some of the most incredible drives you've ever seen. 1996 in Spain, winning by like what, a minute or whatever it was in a car that was nowhere near good enough to do that for the most part, was just mesmeric. 94 as well, I've got to mention some of the wins in 94. I mean, 94, when he was going for his first championship, winning the Spanish Grand Prix, again, same circuit at Barcelona, he had two of his best ever drives there. Winning there, getting second place there despite being stuck in 5th gear, I think it was, around the entire track. He had to do pit stops in 5th gear. The talent of this guy was unmatched, really, during his era, for sure. Once Senna was out of the way, once Senna passed away tragically, I think this guy was just on another level to everybody else. 98 in Hungary, doing qualifying lap after qualifying lap after qualifying lap just to get past the McLarens, and he did it. Then winning 5 championships in a row for Ferrari in the early 2000s, you know. The guy was just unbelievable, and for me, it's so hard to definitively say who the GOAT is, and this will be a video I do one day with like a tier list or something like that, because I know you guys like them. I like doing them personally too. I'll try and do it this off season, but for me, it's impossible to say definitively who the greatest of all time is. How do you compare drivers that never competed against each other? You might be able to compare Michael Schumacher and Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, because they're all similar-ish eras. I mean, they're spread out a bit, but there is a bit of overlap there with at least Hamilton and Verstappen, and then Hamilton also a tiny bit with Schumacher as well. But how do you compare Schumacher to Fangio? How do you compare Jim Clark to Lewis Hamilton? How do you compare Verstappen with Senna? You can't. You can try, but they never shared the same racetrack, and they're completely different eras with completely different driving styles, cars, circumstances, safety conditions, weather conditions, tracks. Everything's different. But without a doubt, Michael Schumacher is one of the GOATs. He was an absolutely dominant force in his era. You know, when he was winning his championships, he was unbelievable. Mid-90s to mid-2000s, this guy was something else. Before him came Senna and Prost and Mansell. After him came Raikkonen and Alonso. And in between that gap, he was unstoppable. The combination of car, team, driver, everything, it just worked perfectly, like a well-oiled machine at Maranello. How desperate are they for those days to come back? And they might well come back one day, but Schumacher will forever be a Ferrari legend, forever be a legend of Formula One. And I really, really hope one day we see him again. We get an interview with him, and he's well enough to talk to us, you know, and I really, really want that to be the case, because obviously, you know, he hasn't made any public appearances. Some people say that he was at his daughter Gina's wedding last year, but you know, we've not heard anything about that. We don't know if that's true. That's just reports. So I really hope he comes back one day into the public eye. And of course, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, because I know some people say that, why are you still saying this after all these years? It's been over a decade since the accident, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You know, get well soon, Michael. Keep fighting. Keep fighting, Michael. Hashtag keep fighting, Michael is something I will always use on my Michael Schumacher videos, because I mean it. I really do. And, you know, despite being someone that, I'll be honest, when he was racing, I was not really a fan of him. Very early on in my Formula One days, I was very much taught, being a Brit, to, you know, not like this guy. He's the German who wins every weekend. He ruins our weekends. But, you know, looking back on him now, you know, he was something really, really special. He really, really was. And he'll be remembered forever. He'll be forever a 7-time world champion. Still one of the 2 drivers to do that feat. And, you know, it's going to be a long time. Unless Hamilton does it, it's going to be a long time since we see someone else either join that rank or surpass it, if it ever happens anyway. But those are my thoughts, guys. Michael Schumacher, a controversial figure, but for me, if we're all being honest here, whether you love or loathe him, you can't deny the man had a God-given talent in that car, and it was just something else. And the dedication, the fitness regimen that he had, everything, it was absolutely on another level. And there's no mystery why this guy was as successful as he was. And had he kept going, he could have kept going after 06, in my opinion. Ferrari ousted him in favour of Kimi Raikkonen. If they didn't do that, I think he could have won an 8th championship quite comfortably. I will be honest, 2008, you stick him in the car instead of Felipe Massa, for me, he's going to win the championship. But that's an alternate history thing. That's my opinion. What's yours? What's your favourite Schumacher moment? There's so many to choose from, of course. Like, share, comment, subscribe as always, guys, here on the F1 Chronicle. And we'll see you very soon. I'll see you very soon. And of course, like I said at the start of the video, happy birthday, Michael. Hope wherever you are as well as you can be. I hope you've enjoyed your day as well as you can. I know you weren't watching this video, but I always do these messages like this because, you know, like I said, legend of Formula 1 for sure. I know one thing as well. One last thing I will mention. This video has gone on for a long time, I know. But one last thing I'll mention. Trailblazer as well in terms of being a German in Formula 1. Of course, there were Germans in Formula 1 before that. Stefan Belloff was a legend before he passed away, of course. Hans-Jochen Stuck as well as another guy I can think off the top of my head. But Schumacher was the first champion, and then there was a whole generation of drivers. So many German drivers coming through after Schumacher. Most notably of all, Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion. So there is that. Formula 1 is a lot of things, but cheap it is not. And that especially applies if you're British. If you're wanting to go to your local race at Silverstone, you'll be absolutely shocked when you see the prices there. In fact, for me in the UK, even though Silverstone's about a 3-hour drive from my house, it is far cheaper for me to go and fly to a European race, get a hotel there and get a grandstand ticket than get general admission at Silverstone for a few days. And that is when you actually have to get a tent and just pitch up in the middle of a field and probably get absolutely drowned trying to do it as well. So yeah, not really my cup of tea personally when it comes to that. But which is the cheapest Formula 1 Grand Prix to attend? Now, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. There's a few different answers, and the answers may well surprise you. But let's get into this, guys. So, with 24 races going across the globe, many F1 fans travel to exotic destinations to watch a race rather than paying the high price for a United States race, for example, as often the high cost of tickets, flights and accommodation can make attending a race in another country a cheaper alternative. For example, at the Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai, they offer a cheapest Formula 1 ticket of them all, and that is with an average price of around $199 for a 3-day pass, and that is something around the region of £150 or so. However, China is not the easiest country to get into, and for those unable to travel to the Chinese Grand Prix, or if that event doesn't really interest you, you can go to some other wallet-friendly alternatives as well. And these can be booked through experienced ticket agents such as Go Sports Travel. Of course, you can do it direct through the venue, directly through Formula 1. Just go through a service that you trust and that you are comfortable using at the end of the day. Just to go back to the Chinese Grand Prix though, my good friend Jared, who of course runs the Formula 1 Chronicle alongside myself as well, he went to the Chinese Grand Prix many years ago and he had nothing but nice things to say about it. Very, very organized, very clean, very efficient, very easy to get around. So there is that as well. I would like to go. I think it'd be a cool one to go to personally. But one that I have gone to and I can say is definitely a cheap one to go for is the Hungarian Grand Prix. This is the second most affordable race on the F1 calendar with average ticket prices of just $207. And this, of course, being in Europe, means that it is a relatively easy one to get to, really. I've been to the Hungarian Grand Prix. I went in 2017. I absolutely loved it. It was an incredible event. And I got absolutely burnt to a crisp because it was very hot. Hungary in the summer is hot. It's labelled as being in Budapest, but it is a long way outside the centre of Budapest. And you'll find that as kind of a running theme, really, when it comes to F1. For example, the Spanish Grand Prix, another one I've been to, is nowhere near Barcelona. It's about 15 miles outside in a town called Montmello. But yeah, you have to go to Moguroi to go to the Hungarian Grand Prix, but it's relatively easy to do so. Just get the train, get a bus, drive if you've got a car. Very easy and cheap to do at the end of the day. And Hungary as well is a very cheap country to go to in Europe, so I cannot recommend that event enough personally. Surprisingly though, Japan is in the top 4 for cheapest Formula 1 races. Bahrain is also up there as well for when it comes to weekend tickets. So if you have the money to get to Japan, or you're already in Japan, if you're going on holiday there, get to the F1. It's one of the cheapest events on the calendar. That is incredible for Suzuka. Take note, Silverstone. And while ticket prices have generally increased across some of the F1 calendars, some venues offer better value than others. European races like those in Spain, Italy and Austria present relatively affordable options as well. And a good thing with going to European rounds as well is that you also get the action of Formula 2, Formula 3 for some of these events, F1 Academy, Porsche Super Cup. It's a full weekend of racing usually if you go to some of these European events. It's not the case for all of them, of course, but quite a few of them are too. But on the flip side of things, the most expensive one, you will not be surprised to hear, is the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And the average ticket price there is, drumroll please, $1,600. Now that's a lot of money. That's like what? That's £1,300-1,200, something like that. 1,500 euros. That is a unbelievable amount of money. Some would say that is a crime, that is blind robbery, but of course that is Sin City, and of course they don't care. They race for the money, not as one, and that is very much a showpiece event to wine and dine Formula 1's VIPs. But yeah, there we go guys. So the cheapest Formula 1 Grand Prix to go to on the calendar is China, followed by Hungary, and other cheap options of course include Japan and Bahrain. Other cheap ones in Europe include Spain, Italy and Austria as well. Belgium's a little bit more expensive, a little bit tougher to get to. That's another event that I've been to, but yeah, going around Spa is absolutely priceless, so there is that, and it might not be on the calendar for much longer either, so take advantage of that while you can. But yeah, have you been to a Formula 1 Grand Prix, guys? How expensive was it? Did it surprise you in a good or a bad way? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. So F1 cars utilize highly specialized chassis designs crafted for maximum performance and safety. These advanced structures form the core of each F1 car, integrating cutting-edge materials and engineering techniques. The primary chassis type used in modern F1 cars is a carbon fiber monocoque, which provides exceptional strength to weight ratio and rigidity. Of course, being a monocoque, it basically means that it's all one structure. One structure, I believe it probably means in French or something like that. I don't speak French, guys, as you can probably tell. But part of the cool thing about F1 is the fact that you've obviously got these individual chassis, so that allows the teams to upgrade their cars throughout a season. Whereas in Formula 2 and Formula 3, it doesn't change throughout the season. It's not developed. It's just supplied by, I can't remember who supplies it now. It might be Dallara or someone like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But in F1, obviously, all the teams make their own cars. So that allows for incredible ingenuity and development throughout a season. So you'll see the performance of cars change quite a bit. I've already done an in-depth video going on about how teams actually create their own cars and actually develop them through a season. So check that out if you've not already, but this just focuses on the chassis themselves. And of course the chassis constantly evolve to meet changing regulations and performance demands as well. Teams invest significant resources into chassis development, seeking advantages in aerodynamics, weight distribution and other driver protections. The chassis serves as the foundation for attaching crucial components like the engine, suspension and the bodywork. Safety remains a top priority in F1 chassis designs because strict regulations govern the chassis construction to protect the drivers during high-speed impacts. Think about what the Halo does in Formula 1 as well, of course. Features such as the energy-absorbing structures and reinforced cockpit areas are integrated into every F1 chassis, showcasing the sport's commitment to driver welfare alongside performance as well. Think about how Romain Grosjean had his crash in Bahrain in 2020, and the fact that after that they made changes to the regulations to actually help prevent a fuel tank rupturing incident like that again. And thankfully since then we've not seen anything like that. Now, of course, with Formula 1 being around for the last 74 years, the chassis has changed a lot during this time. And early F1 cars used something called a space frame chassis. This consisted of welded steel tubes, which again, that just shows you how much things have changed in the last 70 odd years. This design offered strength and rigidity while keeping the weight low. The backbone chassis, a robust automotive design connecting the front and the rear suspension attachment areas through a strong tubular structure, was also used historically in small sports cars and some heavy trucks as well. The Ferrari 500, which dominated the 1952 and 53 seasons, featured a space frame chassis. During the 1960s, teams began to experiment with monocoque construction. Colin Chapman's Lotus 25 introduced this in 1962 and pioneered the technology in F1. The monocoque chassis used a single piece of material to form the main structure, improving rigidity and reducing weight. Monocoque designs quickly became the standard in F1. They allowed for better integration of aerodynamic elements and enhanced driver safety. Teams refined these designs throughout the 70s and 80s, using materials like aluminium to further reduce the weight. But then carbon fiber came in the 1980s and changed everything. McLaren's MP41, which debuted in 1981, was the first car to use a carbon fiber monocoque and probably saved the life of John Watson during the 1981 Italian Grand Prix when he had a very severe accident. Had that been in a aluminium car, like was still the case for many cars at that time, then he might not have lived to tell the tale. Because carbon fiber are produced using various precursor feedstocks such as rayon, pitch, and polycrylonate. I can't say that word. That is a big word. Anyway, look it up. There's a full article on the F1 Chronicle, if you can't tell by the way, going over all this. And their properties are enhanced through heat treatment, making them essential for modern Formula 1 car construction. Carbon fiber offered several advantages over the cars that came before, being higher to strength to weight ratio than metal, energy absorbent during crashes, and being able to complete complex shapes for aerodynamics as well. And by the mid-80s, most teams had adopted carbon fiber chassis because this material allowed designers to create stiffer, lighter, and safer cars, and it also enabled the integration of aerodynamic elements directly into the chassis structure. Carbon fiber tech continues to evolve in F1 to this day, and teams now use advanced manufacturing techniques to optimize chassis design for performance and safety. Modern F1 cars are highly sophisticated structures tailored to meet the sport's demanding requirements. But yeah, like I said, full article over on the F1chronicle.com that goes into far more detail I can during this video, going into how good carbon fiber is, how it actually changes the the characteristics of Formula 1 cars, and going over things such as composite and honeycomb structures as well in the car. So yeah, go check that out if you've not already. The link will be in the description. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Microsoft, just go and search up the website. You can find it by just clicking the F1 logo, F1 Chronicle logo I should say, below this video. But yeah, we'll see you soon guys for some more F1 Explained videos here on the F1chronicle.com. Hope you had a lovely Christmas, have a great new year, and we'll see you very soon. Have a good one.